Hi there, and welcome to the Mindful Messenger Show, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Media Project. My name is Amanda Johnson, and today I am talking to Susan Goodson about mindful authenticity and art. Susan has been an entrepreneur for 39 years. She was an independent beauty consultant for 2 years and has been part of the leadership team as a sales director for 37 with Mary Kay Cosmetics. She is also a published author and a painter who wrote Letting Go of Shame, A Mother's Journey of Raising Addict Children. Susan lives in Riverside, California with her husband, Joseph. Together, they collectively have 5 children and 8 grandchildren. Her goal is to start a movement called RAW, Real Authentic Women, where she can offer women a safe place to gather, find their voices, and speak their truth while empowering themselves and each other to become the magnificent women God created them to be. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Amanda.
I'm so excited to have you here today and to be sharing you with my audience. You have been a wonderful friend and cheerleader and client and teacher and all of these things along my journey. So I'm grateful to be having you here sharing your wisdom with my audience today.
Thank you.
So,
how long have we known each other?
Oh my gosh, I was trying to work that out. I think I met you in 2008.
Okay.
2009. So it's about
Yes. Yeah. At the photography museum, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I was going to build a Mary Kay empire, and you said I was going to write a book. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah.
And so it began. Oh my God. It's been fun. And like I said, I've learned so much by listening to you and watching you move through life and watching you go through the book process and having to just experience all of that with you. So I'm excited about sharing this journey with the audience today. And I'd love to start at the beginning. Just when did this all begin for you? When did you have the idea that, was it me at the museum? It was like, you need to write a book, or was there something about that happening even before?
Well, what's really interesting is when I was little, and I took my Iowa Basic Skills Test, which was the test that we took in school every year. I tested out at like 48% in reading. I hated to read. I didn't comprehend well. I was good at math, but I didn't like to read. So the whole idea of ever writing anything was never in, that wasn't in my future. But I love to spell. And so as I grew up, what I recognize is that when you come from a violent home, there's no safe space to read anyway. There's no safe space to use your imagination, to sit down in a corner and read a book. So I never did. And in my head, I never thought about writing a book until you showed up. And you said, and I wanted to give you a facial. And you said, well, oh, okay. And you know what I do? And I said, what? And you said, I'm an editor. And I said, well, great. That's very exciting. So when can we get together and do your makeover? And you said, well, I've been put in your path for a reason. And I said, yeah, so I could give you a makeover and build my empire. And you said, well, possibly, but I think it's because you're supposed to write a book. And I went,
what?
Really? Are you kidding me? I'm not writing a book. I don't have time to write a book. But that's where the seed was planted.
Well,
and then I thought, what am I going to write a book about? And then, what we talked about. And then it changed, but the book was the same, just the title changed.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be fair, I think it was about that time too that we were hanging out at a networking meeting together.
Yes.
And I remember sitting in the very first networking meeting, and I did not like meeting new people. I was out there getting ready to start a business, but I was also, doing this transformational program for teens at the time. And so I was there as their charity. And I was just in this weird, like, what am I doing phase? And I remember you standing up, and I feel like this is the first time I met you. So I don't know where it works in the timeline. I just remember that was my very first experience of Susan.
Okay.
And you stood up and you made the whole room bust out in stitches. Like everyone was laughing and crying. And, you know, I had just been working through a lot of my own personal story and how to experience and how to facilitate transformation in a room. And I was watching you thinking, holy crap, this lady is like, she's got it. Like, it's so natural to her. And you made everyone feel better. You know, it was like by being honest about the type of day you were having, good, bad, or indifferent. And, you know, just offering this sweet little message as part of it. I just remember thinking, oh my God, I love her. I want her to be
Oh,
my friend.
oh,
So of course I was
thank
trying to
you.
hook you into writing a book because you were a natural speaker who
Right.
really had life experience that I wanted to learn from. And I'm sure there were other people who needed to hear it. And yeah.
And that's so funny because the whole idea of standing in front of people makes me, want to throw up. But what I'm learning is that if you stand up and you look at them and you say, wow, it's so nice to be here, I feel like throwing up, then it's over and they laugh and I laugh and then I just get on with it. And there's no shame in even saying the truth, that I don't have to pretend to be something that I'm not. And it gives other people permission to be something that they're not. And it's a painful journey. I mean, the world keeps saying, you are this, you are this, you are this. And I'm thinking, no, I don't think I am. And I had a dream one time, long time ago, about a room that was natural pine. And it was beautiful. And I was in a house and there was nothing in the room. I could hear a television in the other room. The floor was all natural wood. The room was all natural wood. It was glossy and shiny. And I think there was a bed somewhere in there. But that was it. And what I took away from that dream was that is who I am. That pure, shiny, natural wood. But throughout the years, I've been covered with paint. The Catholic Church said I'm this color. My parents said I'm this color. So I've been splashed with earthly colors. And this journey is really about me learning to let God and me to sand away all those outside colors that aren't who I am, to find the natural me back. Get the natural me back.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Isn't that nice?
That's
Pretty
such
cool.
a great way to describe it. And it also makes me think about our very first chat about your book. You came to a retreat, and I remember you sitting on the couch in this sweet little guest house at Glen Ivy, and you were like, well, I think I'm going to write a book about shit.
I remember we were at a workshop in Lake Elsinore or something, and you had a group in this room and you said, do you want to tell them what you're thinking about? Are you brave enough to say it out loud? And I looked around and, yep, I'm writing a book about shit. Don't know it, don't like it, up a creek, don't give a shit, don't know shit, don't like shit.
This isn't my shit.
Yeah. Whose shit is this anyway? It's not mine. So yeah, that was hysterical. And then remember at the retreat how we were going to maximize it with bracelets that had little goggles on it and little paddles and little piles. And yeah, we did laugh a lot. I really should write a book about it.
Yeah.
I really should. Yeah.
It's pretty, I think you could run hard with it, I mean, and really, I mean, who wouldn't understand what you were talking about?
Right. I think everybody would know, especially if I titled it, Whose Shit Is This?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But there was something that really surprised me about the beginning of our journey together. And that was, I remember it was it was only my second retreat that you came to. And you came with your husband, which was cool. And because he's an author too, and working on it. And I remember the week before I was getting ready and I kept hearing the word anchor. And I was like, what are we talking about an anchor? Like a gift that I'm supposed to get them to take home with them? Or, I was, every time I thought about the retreat, I kept getting this sense that I needed to have an anchor and I couldn't understand it. So I just was trying to be, obedient to this inner voice, which hadn't failed me. And I decided to walk into Michael's one day and I'm walking around and I'm like, what is an anchor? Just waiting for something to talk to me. And then I walk into, I like finally give up. I mean, it's time to go pick up my kid essentially. And I'm like, I don't see anything. And I picked up a few other small little gifts for the group. But then as I was walking out, there was the stand and it had a bunch of paints on it. And I thought, oh, my son just ran out of his paint set. Like, I'll just get that paint while I'm there. And of course I have, my business account, my personal account. I hop into line and I'm getting everything out and ready and trying to separate everything. But I get interrupted by a teacher that I knew when I was in 6th grade. Is randomly like an hour away from where we met. And she's like, oh, how are you and the family? And then I get discombobulated. And so the lady checks out all of the stuff. And I was supposed to keep business and personal separate. Like I had a bookkeeper who was screaming at me in the background. And then I was like, no, that was supposed to be. And I heard no, it's not. It's the anchor. And I was like, what? And so over the course of the week, I was basically shown that I was supposed to use art as a way to help people get clear on who they were and what their message was.
Wow.
And you were the first person, really that first group to be part of the paint project. And I feel like that was for you because I remember watching you paint and thinking, all right, maybe I even asked you, Susan, do you paint? Like, is this your thing? Do you paint on the side? And you're like, no. But you actually are.
I remember. I remember the butterfly. Yeah.
And then you leave the retreat and you start working on your book, which is amazing. And then you start painting and selling your paintings.
I know. That's crazy. I actually had been dreaming about painting. I just had dreams.
Oh.
And I thought, what am I dreaming about painting for? And then Mary Kay had a prize in one of the categories that was a paint set. And I said, I'll take the paint set. Now my friend said, oh, that's so funny. I got the paint set for my 13-year-old. And I should have said, oh, well, I got the paint set for my 13-year-old, me. And then when Joe and I took that 3-month trip across the United States, I said, I'm taking my paint set with me. And it had pencils, oils, and watercolors. Well, Joe has lung problems, so I thought that oil colors had smell and you'd had to have turpentine to clean it, which I found out you don't, because that was when I was young and I'm not. So, but I started doing watercolors. And I started taking pictures of all the changes of the leaves and the colors on the East Coast. And that's where I sat down for the very first time and pulled out this paint set and started to paint.
Yeah. And it's beautiful.
That was right after well, if I met you in 2008, that was 10 years ago. And I think Joe and I took this trip 7 years ago. Yeah. And I think I had the retreat the year prior to us leaving. Oh my gosh, there's one of my paintings.
One of your paintings.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
It's one of my favorites too. That's why I had to get it when I saw it. And the other reason I had to get it was because you see how the bridge goes up and then it kind of like disappears into the forest. And what was crazy was when I saw this, it was after you had, I think it was after you finished the book and you did a gallery art show, which was beautiful. And I remember going and thinking, oh, I have to get this, because this was the big lesson that I learned from Susan, and that was letting go, which I think is funny because it's the name of your book. Letting go of shame. And you know, you came to the retreat and you started to do the writing, and it was beautiful. And we got to a certain point, we were talking about the possibility of you going through the production process and being on stage with some of the messengers. And you were like, you know, Amanda, I think that I'm supposed to do this differently. And I was like, okay. But I was
I remember, because it was right before we took the trip.
mm-hmm.
And we were refinancing the house, and I was going to take money and do the program with you. And the next morning I woke up and the message to me was no. And I said, what do you mean no? I've got it all figured out. And the message was still no. And what I realized is that if I was going to take a 3-month trip across the United States at the same time that I was writing a book and on a deadline, I wouldn't have been on that trip. I would have been in the car, but I wouldn't have been on the trip.
Yeah.
And when I chose the trip and my husband first, I remember Joe saying, I'm really surprised you chose us over you. And I realized that something's I do sometimes. I choose me, you know, and I understand the pendulum swing. You know, I'm the oldest of 5 kids. I come from an alcoholic home. I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. You know, I said yes to everything. Then I finally figure out you can say no. So I'm like, oh, no. Okay, I'm going to tell everybody no. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go from telling everybody yes to telling everybody no. And then somewhere in the middle, I hope I'm going to figure out that I can say yes to some things and no to others. And I'm still in that place. Because my fear was, if you asked me to do something and I said no, that you would never ask me again. And so I didn't trust that my owning my own truth and saying yes to what I needed to do and no to what I needed to do, and being authentic with that, was not going to make me invisible in other people's world, but make me real, and therefore open the doors to more instead of shutting the doors to less. Mm-hmm. But that's been a tough one for me.
Yeah.
Because I've been trained to say yes. Oh, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. And I can't do it all. I want to do it all, but I can't do it all. So maybe I should rephrase that. I don't want to do it all. I want to do the things that feed my soul and still include others, so that I'm not living a selfish life, but that I'm living a balanced and healthy life.
Yeah. 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 And I love the idea too that, you know, that I don't know why this has happened. I suppose we could try to figure it out. Just part of our culture programming, where we felt, or even, you know, growing up in homes where there were very volatile characters, it was very much this like either or. They're either going to be calm or they're going to be a nightmare. They're going to be this, or they're going to be, I can do this and get this result, or I can do this and get this result. And it like created this polarity. But really, I mean, isn't it true for you? I know it's true for me that like the best things that I have ever done that have made me feel the most joyful and full and happy and amazing are also things that made it was like the highest good for me and everyone else.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
It's a trick that we have to choose, like me or them. Well, what if there's a way that we all win?
Right. Well, I agree with you. I think that God's will for me can't be, it's God's will for everybody. You know, if somebody says to me, oh, you're my soulmate, and I look at them and I said, well, you're not mine, that's my ego or their ego or us trying to force an issue. I think if it's really part of the plan, there's peace in that place. It's a win, like you said, it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
But it's when my ego is in the way that I'm pushing, grasping, bullying, emotionally running over people out of a place of fear that I don't even recognize as fear. I recognize it as, oh, this is my passion. Well, passion for me is not driven. Passion is driven by love, and being driven is fed by fear. So if I'm driven, it doesn't look nice. It isn't. It's not. No.
Well, I remember that this was like a really big, while we were working on the book, this was a really big moment of, I don't know if it was the first time that you put all of this together, or if it was just the time that I saw it like land, like where, because you wanted to write, the joke is you wanted to write a book about shit, and we laughed because it was perfect at the time. And then eventually you said, no, I think I'm going to write a book about, what was it that you told me you were going to write the book about?
I think I was going to I said I'm going to write a book about my kids. It was Mother's Day, and I was in the shower, and Katie had called me and said, Mom, happy Mother's Day. We're all here at Dad's. And they were with their stepmom. And I thought, the only person that's not there on Mother's Day is me. And so I was really, really sad. And I was in the shower, and I thought, wow, they're all there except for the mom. And that's when I decided I'm going to write a book about the kids. And you said it's the same story. I said, the book about shit is about the kids? That's the same story? You said, yeah. The shit you go through when you're raising addict kids. I'm like, oh, okay, I can get that. I can, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we got to a certain point, and what was interesting, one of the other things that I learned working with you was that when we go through our stories, we bury some stories in others, right? Like, this is too hard, I'm not going to think about this, right?
Right.
And we just push it out. And those of us who have experienced those big traumas, like, that makes perfect sense. Just push that stuff to the side because you cannot handle it at that point. But what's interesting is that when you start to go through the process of writing the book, you're trying, that's part of what I'm doing, is trying to extract all of the details so that we can make a coherent story for the reader.
Right.
And I remember asking you, when did this happen, Susan? And you were like, I don't know. And then I figured out with you that there's always one story that leads to all the other stories. And for you, it was the Mary Kay story, because I could ask you something about Mary Kay and you were like, oh, that was 2009. And oh, that was 2006. And oh, that was like, this was the thing that was like right there. And then we got into the details of the personal stuff, what was going on behind that bigger story that was really easy for you to find.
Right.
So, so that was really interesting. And then I remember you saying, like, why is that so easy for me? That was such a big moment where I was like, wow, that's something that I think our audience can really take with them, is, when you're trying to get to something, like, there's all of these different angles that you can try to get at it.
Well, Mary Kay's the only thing that's been consistent in my life for 2/3 of my lifetime. Mm-hmm. I just celebrated my 39th anniversary on April Fool's Day. And so that's the only thing that has lived through my marriages. It's lived through my children. It's the only constant I ever had, and I love it and hate it. There's days that I just want to throw everything out of a moving vehicle on the freeway, win the lotto, and go to Spain. Haven't won the lotto yet. So, and I love the relationships that I'm building, and I clearly can see why I'm here. But on the days that I can't see God blessing my efforts, that's when I go, okay, am I really supposed to do this? And because I struggle with all or nothing, you know, God's not saying give this up to have that. He's saying you can have it all. And I don't know how to have it all because it's always been all yes or all no, or all black and all white. So I'm like, okay, then that means I have to quit this to have that. No, you don't. Nobody's telling you have to quit anything to have that over there. You can have it all if you want. Oh, what a concept. Okay. I'll learn to live with that. That I can have more than just one thing.
Mm-hmm. So
it was funny. My granddaughter asked me the other day, she said, Grandma, do you only use Mary Kay? I'm like, duh. Yeah. She goes, well, why? I'm like, because if I use a perfume that's made by another company and someone says, oh, that's really nice perfume. What is it? I have just lost money, honey. You know, this is how I live. So I use everything. She's like, oh, I get it. Okay. Yeah.
Building a little entrepreneur there. So at what point in this idea of sharing your message, like at what point did you start to really get yourself into that process? Like, was there a time where you shared your story and got feedback, or like, what was it that kept you moving through this process? Because it wasn't easy to write through these crazy hard stories that you had to write through.
No, it wasn't. Probably the encouragement of others, you know, and I had a sense that, well, what I know is that I worked, you know, my Mary Kay business is a pretty world. You know, we like to make women look beautiful. But when I was in the house all alone and finding out that my son was, you know, addicted to cocaine, or my daughter was ditching school, or the youngest one was selling marijuana at school because he wanted to be an entrepreneur just like his mother, and he'd even got people to sell for him and then taken a commission, which was not exactly the program that I was teaching, but that's how he interpreted it. I realized that there had to be other people who lived behind the secret of, if you only knew what was happening in my home. If you knew what was happening in my home, you wouldn't do business with me, you wouldn't want to be around me, you would label me as a bad parent. So I felt like I was living sort of a double life. So, you know, how do I call a client and say, oh, I'm sorry, we have to reschedule our makeover. My son's at school getting ready to go to jail for selling marijuana to his friends during lunch. I couldn't say that because there was too much shame around that. And so I recognized that if I had the courage to open up my mouth and, you know, and own my story, that there were other women that would come along and say, I understand, and I carry the same feelings that you do.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that any of our stories are an accident. You know, I don't have this story for nothing. I have this story because it's my story. And I think everybody has a story, but nobody wants to share it because they're afraid they'll be judged. And so we live in the secrets, and there's no power in the secrets. There's dark and shame and guilt and fear, and I don't want to stay there, and I don't want others to stay there.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that I've seen. Like I said, that day that I saw you in front of that room, right? I saw you like just kind of pulling the curtain back and sharing that little bit of honesty, kind of let everyone else in the room settle and relax and like laugh off their morning that you had just described, your morning of drama, trying to get, you know, and it's like, okay, I'm not the only one who deals with this level of chaos while I'm trying to go be put together for a business meeting.
Right. Yeah. And you were always so encouraging. You were always reinforcing the fact that that there was value in people's stories. There was value in my story that other people could benefit if I told the truth. And I learned at a young age to keep secrets. You know, you open up the door to your little friend and you've got legs that are bleeding because of being smacked with a belt, and you just look at her and say, oh, I can't play today, and you close the door quietly. And what's really interesting for me today is that in the place of telling the truth, I'm not angry anymore. You know, I'm not mad at my parents. I love my mom and dad. And I know they did the best they could with what they had. And there were times when it was really not a good job, but there's no anger around that anymore. There's no, I'm going to tell this story so people don't like you, or I'm going to tell this story so people think you're a jerk. I don't feel that way. I remember my dad asking me when I was sharing at an Al-Anon meeting, or actually a woman said, how can you share this story with your mom and dad sitting in the audience? And I said, because it's my story. It's not their story. They can stand up and share their story if they're encouraged to do that. But this is my story, and I get to share my story the way I remember it and the way it affected me. And it has nothing to do with them. It has to do with me. And my mom and dad understood that.
That's amazing. When did that change for you? I mean, I'm assuming that you weren't always very accepting of all of that. I'm sure there was some sort of anger.
Oh my gosh. I still have trouble with that now with Joe, and processing, because sometimes I feel like I'm still playing out the role of my dad with my husband because he's so much older than I am. So there's still those triggers, and I'm still trying to separate myself so that I'm not reacting as a kid with a dad, which I'm sure is part of why I married him. And you know what? None of this for me has been quick. You know, it's not like the light bulb went on and all of a sudden it was like, oh, I get it. Everything from this point on is going to be totally perfect. You know, it's like the light goes on. It's like when I'm walking down the street and the street lights flicker. You know, one minute it's on and then the next minute it's off. And I feel like that's what the process has been, is that the light goes on and I go, oh, I get it. But I don't know yet what the new behavior looks like. So I'm clear on what I don't want to do, but I'm not sure yet what the new behavior is. So maybe I'll do the old behavior, but not 100%. You know, maybe I'll go 50% along and go, oh wait, that's the old behavior. That's the behavior I don't want to do anymore. What could I do differently? Because it's so embedded in my DNA that I don't even have to think to react. It's just automatic. So it's been a slow process of discovery of the light goes on and I go, oh, I get it. Or maybe it's like putting a piece of a puzzle together. You know, there's one piece that I found, and it takes a while to put it all together. I like instant. I do. I like quick, fast, get it done, move on. And, you know, and God keeps saying, oh, no, come on back. And I'm like, no, I've got things to do, people to see, empires to build. And he's like, no, come on back. And that's probably been the most difficult lesson for me, is the lesson of patience, of waiting. You know, my favorite song, the waiting song. Yeah. I don't like to wait. Yeah.
So what was it for you then that like finally got you to that point where you could like finish the book and put it out there and really own that story? And did you talk to your kids about this? Like, this is always a fascinating part for me, right? Because first of all, they're like in many cases, there are real legal ramifications for people. So sometimes we have to talk through fictionalizing this character just a little bit, or the details or something, so people can't figure out who it is. But when it's your kids or your parents, you're kind of screwed. I mean, it's hard to fictionalize that type of influence. So
I told my kids that there were only 2 names in the book that I changed. I changed my ex-husband's name, and I changed the name of the man I had an affair with. My second husband, I told him I was writing a book, and I asked him if I could use his name, and he said yes. And I told my children, I'm writing a book, and I'm using your name. And I said, is that okay with you? And the oldest one said, yeah, are you going to say that I'm in recovery? And I said, if at the time I'm writing the book and you're in recovery, yeah, that's what I'm going to say. The youngest one said, can I read it first before you publish it? And I said yes, which he didn't. His wife did. And I can't remember what Katie said. I think Katie was like, oh, good job, Mom. Go ahead, whatever. The truth is the truth. Now, the oldest son called me one time, and he said, Mom, did you put that I went to jail in the book? And I said, yeah. I go, was I not supposed to do that? And he said, well, I gave the book to the woman who does the books for the company I work for, and her husband is a sheriff. And I said, oh, so you didn't read the book, did you? And he said, no. And I said, well, yeah, that's in there. And what was so interesting is that he went to her and he said, you know what? I didn't know what my mom wrote in the book. And she said, you know what? It's okay, because I have a story too. And my story is that my mother abandoned me and my brother when I was 10 and he was 6, and I took care of him. And it opened up a dialogue between the two of them that they never would have had.
wow.
Had he not given her the book. The youngest son, I read 1 chapter to them on Thanksgiving, and he had to leave the room. He said, I can't listen to this. He said, I can't listen to how Dad treated you. I just can't do it. And I said, well, I want you to know that I participated. It wasn't your dad all doing to me what he did. I had a choice. I could have left. I could have gotten up. I could have, but I didn't. I stayed. And so I did the dance too. So I understand that it's hard for you to listen to, but he's not the only villain in this story. I am too.
Yeah.
And then my granddaughter read a chapter, and she was 12 at the time, or 11. She's like, oh, Grandma, I love your book. It leaves me hungry for more. She was very sweet. Yeah. But yeah, I told him, I said, it's our story. And I think they were a little, I don't think they were afraid. I think they trusted me by that point that it was all going to be okay. And it's all okay.
Yeah. Well, and I do think that that's testament to how you had been a truth teller with them before you were a truth teller in the book. You know, like it wasn't like there were any secrets that were going to be
right
exposed, that you hadn't said anything that you needed to say into the book, you know, in the book instead of to their faces. Like, you guys have already been on such a beautiful, I mean, hard as hell, but beautiful journey of getting honest with them, you know, getting honest with yourselves, getting honest with each other. And I think that's testament to your model for them. Really.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a really, really good relationship. And if I learned one lesson in this whole process of raising these kids, it was the fact that I had to become friends with my own heartache. I wanted it to be their heartache that I was trying to help. Like, if they didn't have a job, I'd find them a job, or I'd give them a ride to work, or I'd give them money to pay their bills, because these poor kids were struggling so much. And it was really my own heartache that I was trying to ease, not theirs. Because if they had hurt enough, they would have made changes. They would have done what they needed to do to get out of the pain. So I kept buying into what I was trying to fix was them. And really what I was trying to learn is to make friends with heartache, with my heartbreak as a mother. Because watching your kids go down the rabbit hole, every time you take a breath, sometimes it feels like you're bleeding out and you're dying in your own pain. And once I said, okay, that's what it is, I have to live with that, then I could stop doing for them what they could do for themselves. Mm. And that's hard. That's really, really hard, because you want what's best for them. And I had to let them find out what that meant. What is their best for them?
Yeah. What was that process like for you? Because, it's something that I know that you were doing far before the time that you were working through the book process, but that is such a huge part of it, of like getting real about the way circumstances really are, internally, externally, separating those things. And then just being that level of honest with yourself and being able to be there. A lot of people don't really get to that place until they start having to write through the stories and be in those moments again. But for you, what did that process look like for you? How did you navigate that?
Well, I consistently went to 12-step meetings. I did 12-step meetings once or twice a week for years, and I still go, because my problems aren't mine. I mean, my problems belong to me. My reactions to people, my issues of control, those are all mine, and I have to be reminded of that. So had I not had a group of 12-step people walking with me for the last 20 years, I would have been a mess, because I wouldn't have learned new ways. I had to learn new ways. I had to learn that no is a complete sentence, that I don't have to say to my kids why. If they say, can I have some money? And I say no. Well, why? The answer is no. But why? I mean, you have money. The answer is no. I don't have to defend myself, and I'm a defender. I want to make you like me while you're hating me. Okay, so I'm not going to give you money and you hate my guts right now, but can you love me and like me while you're hating me? So I was trying to justify my reasons, and I don't have to do that. But I wouldn't have learned that if I had not been with people who had gone down the same road before me and said, this is what my experience is. This is what I learned. I had a good friend tell me one time that, I don't know what happened with her son, but something happened with her addict son. And she went, I don't know if she picked him up from jail or where she picked him up. And she said, I took him out to lunch. And I'm like, why? I mean, seriously, he should be locked in a closet. I mean, he should be, beaten with a whip. I mean, come on. And she said, well, I took him out to lunch because I knew that in public I wouldn't scream at him. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't scream at him, and I wouldn't beat him. So when I caught Katie ditching school one day, and I finally figured out 6 hours later that she hadn't been kidnapped or shopping at the mall on a stolen credit card, I went and picked her up and I said, do you want to go get lunch? And she said, what? You just got me ditching school. You want to take me out to lunch? And I said, yeah, that way I don't kill you and you don't kill me. And so we went out to lunch, and it really was such a great stabilizer. It was so we were both on common ground for the moment. So nobody was reacting. We were just sitting there together, trying to understand one another. And I wrote in the book about that. And she, after she read the book, she called me and she said, I just want you to know I never ditched again. I said, oh, okay. So it was just those lessons that I learned from others that I implemented, because I don't think we can do it alone. I think we need a village. I think we need other women who are wiser, that have gone ahead of us and said, here's my experience, strength, and hope, take what you like and leave the rest. Because it really is about owning our own story and finding our own way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the way that you've shared it in your book as far as this, letting go of the shame. Like at what point did you realize that it was really shame that you were dealing with, and how did you, connect all of those dots and get to the point where you could let it go? I know it's an ongoing journey, but what was that process like for you?
Oh, Amanda, I don't know. I don't know when the light went on that that's what it was. But I think that for me, anytime that I'm living in the dark and I don't want anyone to know, that's what I call shame. I call shame that part of me that doesn't want anyone to know, because if you know, you won't love me anymore. And it could be nothing to someone else, but it's everything to me. So I think our shame triggers can all be different. Some people would say, oh man, that no problem. I don't have a problem with that. But I might have a problem with that. So I think the process was just, I don't know, I guess it was learning to move into the feeling aspect and recognizing what those feelings are. I still have issues today about self-care. Like, there's shame around the idea that if there's something physically going on with me, I don't want you to know it. Because if you know it, then somehow I've done something wrong. I haven't taken care of myself. I don't know, but it's like, I don't want you to know. And because my dad was so physically ill as a kid, his needs always came first. So the idea of going to the doctor and taking care of things for me is like, I just want to push that away. I want to just push that down and ignore it because everybody else's physical needs are more important than me. And that's an old tape. That's an old, if you knew that I wasn't 100% healthy, what would you think of me? And yet consciously, I keep saying to myself, well, it doesn't matter what people think. But subconsciously, it does, because if it didn't, I would be more transparent with that.
Yeah. How does this aspect of your story affect your messaging and your art? Like putting yourself out there to the world, because it's like the opposite of hiding, right? It's like that, putting yourself out there and being visible. What has that process been like for you?
Well, especially with my art. My art, everybody has an opinion of what art is. So I was asked if I would donate a painting to a fundraiser in March. And I gave 2 paintings, and I thought, what if people don't like them? I mean, what if, it's sort of like doing contrary behavior. And contrary behavior is, in the past, what have I done? And in the past, I would have said, it's not good enough. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna put it out there. I'm not gonna put it out there to be judged. So what's the contrary behavior? The contrary behavior is put it out there. And if it's judged, just tell people, don't tell you. I remember when my mom still loved my ex-husband, and I'm like, you know what? You can love him all you want. Just don't tell me about it, okay? Just don't. If you love him in another room, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know about it. It's sort of like when my kids will call and they'll say, oh, do you know what Sean's doing? I'm like, don't tell me about it. It's not my business. Don't want to know. Didn't ask. So the only hard part for me is to expose my talent and then go on Facebook and see if somebody wrote about it. And if they wrote about it and they didn't like it, then I'm like spiraling into, oh God, I should never have done it. So it's sort of like, put it out there and don't go looking. And when I am in when I am in space with my relationship with my higher power, with God, and I know that I am loved because of who I am, and I'm not trying to earn that from another human being, I'm much braver, because if that was a gift I was given, and my perspective is I need to share that gift with others, then I can let go of the other stuff. It's only when I lose sight of who's in charge and then I start looking around to be affirmed. And that's an endless hole. There's never enough. There's never enough affirmation that I'm good enough. So I have to be mindful of the moment. And I'm a thinker, I'm always in my head thinking of what's coming next and where am I going and how am I going to get there. And so it's when I'm mindful of where I am right here, right now, that everything can be okay.
Yeah. I love that. What are your practices for staying mindful, for being in that space, as you called it?
Usually it's when I'm flung off of the gerbil wheel into the wall. I picture myself as this little gerbil on this wheel, the wheel of life. And then all of a sudden I'm moving so fast that I'm flung right off, right into the wall. It's like, oh, dang, here I go again. So I think it's just, I don't know what my practices are. I think it's just a conscious effort on, I just bring myself back to me at any given moment on any given day. And I'm not a real good meditator because, I can only stop my thoughts for like 3 seconds. And so I lay there and I fidget. I'm a fidgeter, so I'm always moving around, and it drives Joe crazy. Joe says, how can you move around so much there, sitting there? And I'm like, well, how can you sit so still for so long? I don't get it. It's just who I am. But more and more and more every day, I stop and take a breath. I remember who I am, where I am. I'm grateful. I've been so much more grateful in these last few months than I ever have been. Not because there weren't things to be grateful for, but because I was so busy looking at the things that frustrated me. And I have to share that I had to go see 2 specialists yesterday. And in the past, I would have been so worried about what was going on. I would have ruminated and wondered and feared and thought, and then I would have got to the doctor. My blood pressure would have been high. My heart rate would have been off the chart. And yesterday, it was totally different. My blood pressure was good. My heart rate was like 15 beats lower than 20 beats lower than it's been when I've been to the doctor. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't ruminating the whole week. I just was grateful that I was where I was, and it was going to be what it was going to be. And I was okay with that. And that's a first. I've never gone into health situations like that. That's always been probably my biggest trigger. And how I feel things from other people, and I came from a family where you were only paid attention to when you were ill. One kid was in the hospital, one had heart failure, my dad had colitis and alcoholism, and one, they thought he had a tumor in his leg. And here I am, well, so far so good, until the girl around the corner had a brain tumor and I started getting headaches. So it's sort of like I have been this big, huge ball of yarn with so many different colors. And the process is what unwinds me so that I can see what colors I am and how each color plays a part in who I am, instead of throwing the whole ball of yarn out and starting again. Which is really what sometimes I'm like, that's it, I'm done, I'm throwing out the whole thing. Or if I grew a garden and it was beautiful for the first 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden the weeds come, I just want to dig up the whole garden, throw it away, start again. But there's weeds, and at any given point in my lifetime, there are going to be weeds. So am I willing to get in and do the work to keep a beautiful garden, or am I going to continue to dig it up, throw it away, and start again? Because I will get to that point again. And so I'm learning how to weed the garden.
Yeah. It's funny because up here in the Pacific Northwest, there's this, I don't know what happens in spring here, but the grass grows like, it's supernatural, man, how fast everything grows. And so it's like, if you're not out there getting on those weeds up front, the weeds grow faster than everything else. And I remember last year I was out there thinking, this is a metaphor for my life right here. Like, there's some things that
I know.
I've just been ignoring, and then all of a sudden something happens and they just get pushed up so fast.
And that's like our character defects. How come our character defects can grow so quickly, and those other things, patience, tolerance, kindness, take so long to grow? I think it should be different. But then I think that ice cream should be healthy and broccoli should be not.
Me too.
Yeah.
And that's the real message for today, is that
ice cream should be healthy and broccoli should be not.
Oh, no, I love it. It's just about, dealing with what is. And I love that I've been able to watch you. I love how that metaphor that you use with the paint, like just sanding it away and sanding it away and sanding it away until you see more of you. And right. It's been really amazing to watch. I know the pain of being sanded. And
yeah.
I know that feeling, and I just really acknowledge you for doing that and doing it in a way that, you're still putting your art out there. You're still putting your message out there. You're still standing away and getting ready to put this new program out there for women. I think it's going to be, who better to help women, have a space to be raw.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. I don't know how it's going to play out. I just, and those are some of the things that I want to know. But you've taught me, hey, you get the idea, you just take the first step. Everything else will come together as it's supposed to. So don't run ahead of yourself and then quit before it starts. Start it and then watch it. Mm-hmm. Weed it and water it.
They're going to tell you exactly what they want as soon as they get there. You'll know.
Right. The magic will happen there because of them, not because of anything else.
Yeah. Well, and because you've already done so much work. Like
right.
I said, right? It's like your book, you did all of this work, and you were truth telling long before you were truth telling on the page. So you were able to write more quickly. You were able to do it with the least amount of insanity going on in your family as a result of telling these very personal stories. That is a feat. That is.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been exciting. It really has, but it's not for the faint of heart. But growing up is not for the faint of heart. Mm-hmm. It's so much easier just to live in the dark, because once the light shows up, then you get to see what needs to be changed, and then you have to have the courage to do the work. So don't turn on the light. You don't have to worry about it.
You just don't know what you're going to step in when the light's not on.
That is very true. Or who's going to step on you when you're in the dark.
That's right. Because they don't know, they can't see you.
I know.
Well, I want to thank you for for sharing your story today and sharing your wisdom. I'm sure that our audience is like, oh my gosh, this lady is so wise. She has been through so much. And I hope that they're feeling better about their own stories and their own art and being authentic and real. Because I know every time you are, I just feel like this whole bit of relaxation. It allows even me to, relax into even a deeper sense of authenticity and honesty. So
Thank you.
that is one of your superpowers, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you.
So before we go, I always have these questions at the end that I find always give me even more juicy information about my messengers,
Mm.
and also offer some amazing ideas and resources to the audience. So, what was the first book or message that changed your life?
Oh my goodness. You don't even give me any time to think.
They're called rapid fire for a reason.
Oh God, Amanda.
What's the first one that comes to mind?
Celestine Prophecy.
Oh, it's such a good story.
Celestine Prophecy. That's the first one that comes to mind. The most recent book I read was The Alchemist.
Mm.
But I am such a digger. I suck the bone marrow out of everything that I can find. So I don't. So the one I can think of is the Celestine Prophecy.
Awesome. What's your favorite book and why?
My favorite book and why? Can't I say my favorite movie instead?
Sure.
Okay. There's a couple of them. One is called The Other Side of the Mountain.
Mm.
That's the story of Jill Kinmont, who was a skier, and she skied over off a mountain or something and was paralyzed. And it's her story of love and abandonment and truth and coming out on the other side alive. And then the other one is Brian's Song, which is about Brian Piccolo, who was a football player who was young and got sick, and how he made very good friends with, what was his name? Last name was Sayer, and they were roommates. And Brian Piccolo was white and his friend was black, and it was back in the days when you don't befriend other people who are different than you. And it was their story of love and friendship, and learning to live with what was and what is, and the message that we're all just passing through. Mm-hmm. So those are the two movies that I like.
And how about your favorite messenger?
Brene Brown. I love Brene Brown. She is so real. She just gets up on stage, whether she's feeling chubby or skinny in her jeans. She doesn't care. She just shows up every day to life and tells her truth. I love Brene Brown. I love you too, but I love Brene Brown.
Yeah. Talk about raw and authentic. She's
my hero.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again.
You're welcome.
I want to ask, if our audience wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do that? We're going to post your book. But
awesome.
If they want to follow your blog or connect with you on the other side of this interview, how should they do that?
Well, I'm still working on that blog thing, but they can go to www.susangoodson.com. There's stuff there. I'm still not quite sure how much stuff is there because I got to get current with that. and my email is sgoodsonmk, as in Mary Kay, @gmail.com. So, yeah, they can come join my raw movement.
Yes.
We can create a global raw movement. Don't know how that's going to work, but we could do it.
Totally. We're going to build a raw empire. An empire.
I love it. We are so raw.
Real authentic women.
Women. Real authentic warrior women.
There you go.
We could be RAWW, warrior women.
Love it.
Yeah. I love you, Amanda. Thank you.
I love you too. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, listeners, for joining us today. I'd love to hear what you're taking away from today's conversation. And I also want to thank our sponsor, sitechisel.com. Remember, they're offering a 10% discount to all of my listeners with the code MINDFUL10. That's it for today. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.